Welcome to Higher Intelligence, smart takes on AI for the next generation campus. I'm JC Bonilla, a tech executive, data scientist, and educator. Each week, we cut through the noise and decode what really matters for your institution. AI explained for higher ed. This week, I have one statistic that is making everyone talk about it, specifically in higher education. You ready for it? 70% of the organizations have at least one AI pilot running. Great. 70% have some type of AI running. It looks like a pilot. But only 14% have successfully taken that pilot into deployment. The rate of scalability is the conversation today. And the findings that reframes the whole conversation is that 84% of those failures are not technology failures. Let me say that again. 84%, the majority of them are not technology. It's not the AI. It's leadership. It's change management. It's us, the people, the institution. AI did not fail. Unfortunately, we, the humans, the institutions did. With me today, I have a superstar, Andrea Gilbert, SVP of Partner and Solutions Marketing at Everspring. More than 20 years doing this, advising universities, provost, deans, leadership at the inflection point of strategy execution. A lot of data points, my friends, of what to do and probably what not to do. She knows what works, and more importantly, she knows what is not working. In data science, we call that positive data and negative data. And in this episode today, we're talking about the gap between pilots and practice, between attempts and scale, between aspiration and what really works. Andrea, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course. Andrea, two things to get us started. Three things to get us started. A bit about yourself, a bit about the company. I think Everspring, it's a fantastic partner. And also, the third thing we're going to talk about before we jump into the news, we're teaming up with the Element team, the Enrollify team, and Everspring to do the first in class, in my opinion, AI in agentic training for higher education. So you will be teaching a course, a section on this very topic. So let's start with who you are, the company, and also what is it that you're planning to do in about a month as it relates to this topic.
Yeah, it's such an important topic. So I'm excited to dive into it today. As you said, I'm Andrea Gilbert. I've been with Everspring for about 14 months. I've been in higher education, though. You were kind. You said 20 years. It's getting closer to 30. I started my career
rounding down. I
appreciate that. I started my career here in Chicago at Illinois Institute of Technology as the event coordinator, but left as the director of admissions a long time ago. Then I moved to RNL and was at RNL for 20 years. Managing the enrollment, fundraising divisions of the company, and now at Everspring. And I'm so excited about the innovations that Everspring brings to our institutional partners. We have over 15 years of experience here at the company, focusing on full funnel enrollment, really driving to bring better enrollment outcomes and revenue to institutions, and doing it in the most innovative way. So AI is front and center of our minds. It's one of the most important tools we can use that build around the strategies that we're building.
In a bit of the color of your services at Everspring, so we know you're based in Chicago. Just kind of how many clients are we seeing a year and what type of services you guys provide?
So we have about 60 clients. We were born out of a revenue share model in the industry focused on grad enrollment, but it has really evolved. Let's do that again. So we have about 60 clients that we work with and focused on enrollment all the way through to graduation. It's evolved through graduate enrollment, traditional undergraduate enrollment, brand work at the institution level, but marketing, enrollment services, learning design, research, anything that supports driving better enrollment, stronger enrollment, and more revenue for an institution.
Oh, my bread and butter graduate. That's where I make my marks or my face marks, or
you cut wrinkles, your teeth. You cut your teeth,
or my rank marks. Speaking of background, We competed actually. Illinois Institute of Technology and NYU Engineering. We were toe to toe for a few years back in the day when it came to the international markets. So I guess some semesters you won, some other semesters I won. So we'll see. We'll share those.
We'll
stories.
share those offline.
Now you and I will be teaching over 100 leaders in about a month in a full day of professional development on what AI is, how to build an AI native organization, and how to be a leader there. We have content around how you build your agent, how to connect your agent to data, thinking about the state of the union as it relates to AI and agentic AI. But one of the courses that we thought is super important is how do you go from basically a pilot, POC, to scale? What makes it stick type of thing?
Yes.
Right? So talk about, and this is today's episode, right? But just talk about what this session could look like for everyone interested in, I love what Andrea just said and what's going to happen in like the other sessions that you'll be doing in Charlotte this year.
Yeah, it's such an important topic because I think many people try to jump in with both feet and make it an across-the-board strategy, try to eat the elephant in one bite, as the saying goes. And we really got to think about working on the crawl, walk, run approach in building plans for AI. And so we have found that the best approach to this is starting with pilots. If we start too big, we see it fail fast. And oftentimes when you're trying something new, you want to fail fast so you can move on to the next. But what that has caused institutions to do is kind of swirl in the inability to really make impactful change. And so the pilot approach has allowed us to help an institution identify the problem and really tackle it intentionally at a smaller scale. Say, we've gotten some ROI from that. We are seeing that it's working. Now let's move on to the next pilot and let's continue to build on that momentum instead of starting with the big picture, trying to get everybody on board to do it, invest all of the resources to make it happen, and then it just stalls because there isn't the intentionality and potentially tracking towards ROI. And so we have seen some really great successes with our campus partners in piloting things that move the needle at a much faster rate when you start at a smaller scale.
Sounds like it'll be a conversation about frameworks, obviously stories of success, and I think that you'll partner with incredible thought leaders and operators to bring this conversation. Let's switch to the news, and let's start actually with the topic that you're presenting, with this idea of pilots. But the news in this case is showcasing, obviously, we need to talk about dramatic things, is showcasing a really, directionally speaking, something that we don't like. As of March of this year, the data that we've been seeing indicates that 78% of the of the institutions that have AI are running some type of AI as a pilot. So 78% are running pilots, but only 14% have successfully scaled that AI project into an organizational wide operational use. 78% are running AI, it looks like a pilot, and only 14% have been able to make that pilot into something that sticks. MIT research last year, a lot of controversial aspects of that research showcased that it was only 5% of the projects that stick, 95% of them fail. On your screens, you should be seeing the analysis that we're showcasing. This comes from McKinsey & Company, and you start seeing basically a really interesting survey, and Andrea and I will kind of have some commentary, but this is the upward turn that we're seeing. AI is into organizations. It looks like POCs. And to your point, don't jump with both feet, but do it strategically, be intentional. And this is probably the path of lowest resistance. Now, is it? Because the research identifies that when the failures take place, which at this case, we're looking at almost 89%, these are the reasons why there's a failure. Integration complexity with legacy systems. The pilot worked on clean data. Haven't we seen this a million times? But once you bring in the real data, specifically academic institutions, we know this is true. The data is a mess. It's siloed. Basically, it's deprecated. We have significant data integrity issues. So the scalability of the project breaks at this point. Number two, inconsistent outputs with quality. at volume. So when you perform this with curated examples, these 50 use cases, they look fantastic. But once you do it with 50,000, it looks different. It starts creating some issues around trust and trust erosion embeds. This is a really important one. No monitoring of tooling. Nobody builds the infrastructure to know when AI is underperforming, like what is AI is doing. All of a sudden, we just trust AI and maybe it's not doing what it want to do. 4, unclear organizational ownership. This is such an important one. The pilot had a champion, but once it goes into production, who owns it? Someone paid for it. Someone oversaw the demo and everything. But do you know who is using this at scale? Last one, insufficient domain training data. The model doesn't understand the institution's specific context, the policies, the edge cases, and whatnot. So, what is my takeaway here? 84%. That's the number I want to hone in, right? And sit with it for a moment. Every conversation, right, that is happening with the institutions on how AI is working and how to make it quickly, right? It's not a technology problem, right? It's not the model, it's not the vendor, it's not, with the integration. What we're starting to see is that if the pilots fail after 12 months or a month into it, right? Is it that we don't have a measurement framework? Is it that we just didn't understand the design workflows that it came with it? Is it that it's the leadership, right? But those questions are very, very clear, that there's a sequencing that is not the technology, is with us. So Andrea, you advise thousands, hundreds, a million, I don't know, an incredible number of leaders in your career, right? And are you seeing this number? 84% of the AI deployments are failing, and it's mostly because leadership, us, the people. What actually does that look like in the ground, outside the reporting, specifically in higher education? Are these patterns the same?
Yeah, I unfortunately, I do think it's true. We are seeing what you are talking about on the one-to-one level as we are working with institutions. And they're just as frustrated about this, by the way. I think they are looking to solve the problems, right? And I don't think institutions have an AI access problem. I think it really comes around operational change. I think that it's that human element really coming together with the technology and the tools that are out there and available. It's not a surprise to anybody that higher education has been behind the curve of technological advances for decades. We have all gotten on board with the Amazons of the world and Starbucks of the world, predicting what my order is going to be the next time I come to Starbucks, or reminding me to reorder something on Amazon. It's just the behavioral piece of our human beings as it stands. But because higher education institutions have not kept up with those advancements, AI is forcing institutions to make some really uncomfortable changes, but ones that we all know sitting around the table are so important. And so I think that because it is forcing that fast forwarding of the technology movements, it is making people uncomfortable, and they're treating it more of an experiment instead of a transformation. This can really transform how institutions are performing and the results that they're seeing, but it's really hard for human behavior to change.
I think you're on the money. 2 points in time where the experiment, to use your point, right, versus the transformation took place. When cloud came to us, right, it was transformation, right? And I think I saw too many receipts, too many examples where the leadership said, we're going to do it, and change management was done appropriately. When machine learning, predictive analytics, and all that kind of modeling came out, it was experimentation. I personally built so many predictive models for academic institutions, and it didn't work. So the machine learning aspect of modeling was more of an experiment. The change management was not done the right way. If anything, the leadership layer was omitted. In your experience, where do you see this change management being the most important for AI? Is it the leadership layer, top-down approach? You need to have executive sponsors. Is it the middle level that you need to address? There's a lot of people who think that is the organic aspect, a bottom-up approach. Where do you see it having a better opportunity to make a difference as it relates to change management? Top down, middle, or bottom up?
Can I say both? Everything. Wouldn't that be
it's a multiple choice exercise here. What do you think?
Yeah. Looking through rose-colored glasses, I would love to say it's both. But I think when we know that institutions are facing such budgetary challenges right now, that is where it's so important to be top down. But the people who are the doers in this conversation need it to be bottom up, right? We are seeing quite a sizable sophistication gap between people's knowledge of what we should be doing kind of philosophically versus how we actually make it happen from the doer's perspective. And so I really think it's almost a point where it's got to meet in the middle because we need the budgetary support behind making these organizational, operational changes, but we also need the voice of the people who are responsible for implementing that change to make sure that we're thinking about it in the way that we need to when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to integrations of systems, when it comes to kind of the nuts and bolts, and as I refer to it, the ticky-tacky things that we need to keep in mind on this implementation. So, but I think that we have to come at it in two different ways, right? Like we know from a budgetary perspective that there's some institutions where their budgets are siloed, where there's dollars over here within a program, there's central marketing dollars, there's enrollment dollars, and they're all driving after, rightfully so, the goals that they have in front of them. And then there's who owns the website, who owns the technology, who's making the updates. And so when there's a divide there, it's oftentimes where we see the pilots fail and the experiments fail because no clarity on ownership. There may have been governance that was put into place when AI kind of exploded a couple of years ago, but we haven't made updates to it. And we also aren't always going after the same measurable outcome. What is the goal here that we are trying to solve? So when somebody comes to us and says, we need help, we've lost traffic on our website, or our enrollment is down X%, they're going to say, we need help on AI visibility, for example. Can you help us look at that and solve that specific technical problem? And we say, let's take a step back. Like, what's our end goal here? Is our end goal enrollment, revenue, traffic, whatever, fill in the blank? And so we need to make sure that we're all marching towards that same goal. If we start at the top and work down, we're going to have different goals. If we start at the bottom and work up, so it's coming together and really building a foundation on what that goal is, and then building a plan from there.
Designing for the outcome first and seeing how the technology helps you fit
Exactly.
the end goal is the sequencing as opposed to here's the technology, what can I do with it, right? And I think in your framework that you just kind of put there, it's how we start thinking about pilots that have a chance to scale within higher education footprint. The other thing I'd like to bring up, I think you're talking about the roles, this idea of, okay, you're going to be responsible for the POC, but where does the authority and the accountability come after that? And kind of the steering committee for the POC, the steering committee for the scale. We're much better at the first one in higher education, or at least in my experience, that's what I see. Are you seeing anything else that designing pilots to scale? What are institutions kind of? There's a lot of shiny. I guess my last question here: a ton of shiny, impressive POCs are coming out of steering committees at the POC level. What are the if the outcome? Start with the outcome, and the people for continuity are two ingredients. Is there anything else that pilots that are designed to scale successfully?
I think the learning process that people, machines have to go through in the pilot process is such an important step that oftentimes we miss, right? That it goes back to my fail fast comment. Like, if we can figure out quickly that it's not going to work and we can pivot, that is the best outcome, even though it's not the outcome we wanted, right? So I think the learning process is super important as we go through those pilots. But I think also making sure that we're making a measurable result that is reachable. I think everybody would love to say, I want to double my enrollment, or I want to grow my revenue by a certain dollar amount, but we know it's pie in the sky and not realistic. And so if we can prove along the way that the pilot is working, that is also where we grow our community and we get more people on board to say, we want more of that. We want to try that. We want to do what they did because they're seeing it work on the other side. I think that we're not in the job of convincing people that this needs to happen. We want to show them how it can happen and what can be the result at the end.
All right. AI did not fail. The institutions did. 84% of the AI project failures trace to leadership gaps, unfortunately, not the technology gaps. And I hope this conversation starts to motivates you start thinking about, hey, it's a duality of technology and us humans, us how we work, right? Let's switch to another report that I thought it was now more relevant because it comes from the Boston Consulting Group and it's actually designed to look at the state of higher education. Is reporting released a few months ago. It showcases that AI, as it relates to higher education, we have a once in a generation opportunity to make it happen. My gosh, that sounds so scary. But yeah, let's unpack this. The framing is bold, right? So, and the data is supporting it. What this reporting is looking at is that some institutions have really attained the value of AI. Penn State, let me just pick on one of the institutions that was reported, right? They achieve ROI of 110% return on investment on the enrollment engagement that they wanted to do. The same institution, as it looks to research optimization and funding allocation, it moved from 70% efficiency to 92%, generating measurable output as it relates to research. These numbers are real. They're not basically made up. And it's coming off of this report. Let me just switch my screen. So for those of you who are following, you can see eyes on what this reporting and conversation it's going to look like. This comes from Boston Consulting Group. And one of the things that happens is that the columns of who made it, who makes AI unlock value, and the ones that are basically not. And some of the aspects as it relates to student success, workforce alignment, and those type of things. So here's how I start seeing this, Andrea. From the Boston Consulting Group research and reporting, there is these outcomes. The winners treat AI as an operational redesign problem. And then at technology, second, they integrate AI workflows with the strategic intent. You spoke about that on our first reporting, right? They redesign the process around specific measurable outcomes. You need to know what you're trying to solve first, right? And be intentional about it. They don't buy AI because they're trying to figure out what to do with it. It's a nice shiny object. Let me figure out what to do with it. They start the day with, I need to retain 200 more students. I need to process financial aid 40% faster. They reduce advising wait lists by half. This indicates there's a benchmark of where they are today and thinking this is the problem that we're trying to solve, so AI can come and fix this for me. So what is my POV here? Penn State and the institutions being mentioned here, by the way, your alma mater academically and your alma mater as an employee, Illinois Institute of Technology is mentioned here, ASU is mentioned here, Ohio State, many institutions. They're seeing that the proof of concept, it's working, the scalability is working, and what they're also seeing is that they never started the conversation with, what do I do with AI? But how can AI help me solve these problems? That sequence, outcome first, technology second, it's the biggest differential. So Andrea, from the outcome first practice, which we spoke about it, in your experience, how often do institutions come with that? I mean, the part that I couldn't agree more is that this is how it works, but I couldn't agree more is the reality that this is how we, academic institutions and educators, we often don't show up with, unfortunately, right? Are you seeing that? Do you agree with this kind of apocalyptic statement I just gave you, that if that is the way for us to succeed, we don't show up in most of the boardrooms with the outcomes, understanding what is the outcome we're trying to do, and the measurable benchmark to see how much it needs to improve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in total agreement, which is, it's so interesting that how closely the last conversation ties to this one. I mean, it's all connected, right? And going back to your comment earlier about the shiny tools and, you know, the things that are catching people's attention is often distracting in what we're actually trying to accomplish here. And so, yes, I couldn't agree more. And unfortunately, we do see people coming to the table thinking that they've got more of a technical issue, or they're losing leads on their website, and it's more of a small picture problem. And we need to say, let's take about 10 steps backwards and pull the camera up and look at this in a bigger picture. And then I also think it's important to comment that, the outcomes piece of this that we're talking about here is really focused on what is the goal, like what are we trying to achieve? But looking at it through the student lens, they are also thinking about their personal outcome. Like, what job am I going to get? Am I going to be AI ready for the workforce? As your chart talked about, related to the student experience. So the role that the AI plays in teaching the students once they enroll is such an important one that I don't want to be missed. And we're addressing on our learning design side. So I know this is mostly focused on an institutional outcome, but the buyer of the institution, the student and their families, have an outcome also in mind that's important for us to remember to connect to as well.
What I call my sabbatical, it's when I spent 3 years in marketing performance for S&P 500 type of companies. Taught me something, right? The intentionality of ROI and how it gets measured is worth big bucks. We're talking about every time we did a project for a big brand, there was a gigantic budget and a scope for a team of advanced analytics to come and do the measurement framework and really demonstrate ROI. We don't have that resource in higher education, and unfortunately, we don't start the day with benchmarks in many cases. But ROI in AI needs to be demonstrated, and that's kind of the point that we're having this conversation. So what's your POV on ROI for AI? Is there a AI ROI framework that you're playing around with? Are there metrics that you think are important? Just talk to us about where Andrea Gilbert and Everspring are as it relates to measuring ROI in academic institutions.
If there's not a measuring stick that shows ROI, it's as if we didn't even do it.
That's a powerful statement.
One of the things that I think Everspring brings to the conversation is not only the 15 years of historical data on what we have seen work and not work with our institutional partners. We also are committed to making sure that we are helping solve the problem before you have to pay for it to get solved. Like, we're not using institutional resources to find our solutions. We want to make sure that we've already tested it and have a proven result that we can bring to the table. And so I've always equated in all of my experience with predictive modeling, whether it's logistic regression or the machine learning that you mentioned earlier, that we want to make sure that we're looking back and say that historical data is telling us a story. And what is that story telling us? And then every year we progress and technology advances, we write a new chapter. And so let's use that historical experience. Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior, right? And behavior with AI is such an important part of what we are seeing work and not work. So I think that's an overarching statement. But when it comes to the work that we're doing in the AI space, we set benchmarks and measurements throughout the project, because again, the LLMs are changing every day. I Google something and it looks completely different than it might have looked yesterday or the day before, right? So we have to make sure that we are continuing to optimize what our strategy and what our solutions are based on those changes that we can't predict are coming, because they release an update or they're testing something with paid media and they're putting paid above the AI overviews, whatever it may be. And so it really is important for us to stay ahead of that so the institutions don't have to worry about it and try and figure it out on their own. And so setting those benchmarks with whatever the project may be on how we are going to measure success is part of our project plan from the beginning.
It sounds what you're saying, Andrea, is that you will be looking at percentage increases from a benchmark, right? So what AI as a measurement framework is, you get your benchmark, you need to know what that number is, and I guess AI is going to try to beat it. Is that a fair summary of what you just mentioned? And I'd love to hear an example if that is.
Yeah, correct. For sure. I'd love to share an example. So For example, we have a solution that's focused on AI visibility. We have seen about 20% loss of traffic on most websites. So let's just let that sit for a minute. 20% loss of leads coming into an institution from organic traffic. And institutions are trying to make up that difference by increasing paid media. We know a paid media lead is not going to perform the same as an organic lead or inquiry that's coming to your
Not
website
apples to apples.
proactively,
Yep.
right?
The eyeballs do not have the same, an organic eyeball impression is the same thing as a paid impression, right? Okay,
Yes,
following?
exactly. So if you look at conversion of a paid lead versus an organic lead, it's generally lower. It's not as qualified. It's not as interested. So also budgets, 45% increase in paid media is not sustainable. Nobody can afford just continually dumping more money in. So how do we help an institution solve that problem on AI visibility so that they're pushing information from their website out to the LLMs, right? And trying to get back the volume of organic traffic that they need in order to be successful. So in that example, we can see the before of how they're performing on their website. We need to make recommendations on schema markup and technical architecture of their website and content gaps on what they need to do on the website to make sure that information is getting pushed out. So we would create that measuring stick of, what are the questions students are asking out in the LLMs, and are you presenting before? Yes or no? After the updates and changes are made, what percentage are we seeing you get cited in AI overviews or LLMs? So we want to set that benchmark of what we would like to see out of the outcome, and also bring in that ongoing optimization to say, okay, now this has changed with Claude or Perplexity, so we need to make this yet again another update. So it's walking that path along with the institutions, and not everybody has done this before. So we also want to work on upskilling teams at institutions so that they can learn alongside and then be able to run with it once it's time to move from that crawl, walk, run.
It makes a lot of sense and makes a ton of sense. And one of the things that I've wanted to triple down on is AI is coming at us with these examples in terms of ROI metrics. Is I know I have a historical conversion, a historical performance, or historical efficiency. I'm either, in your example, trying to keep up with it because it's very difficult to sustain it given, externalities, traffic leaving and whatnot, or beat it. That's actually a framework where AI has an incredible opportunity to be successful. I like that a lot. Other metrics that are starting to proliferate as AI deployment becomes more assistive is hours time saved, kind of redeployment into ultimate tasks, or what is called AI workflow coverage. So we can talk about that in other episodes. I want to move forward to our third story, because this also even gets closer to how we start thinking about adoption and scaling projects. And this reporting comes from EDUCAUSE. EDUCAUSE 26 annual research on AI impact on work in higher education surfaces a really interesting pattern that in a way validates the Boston Consulting Group and the research that we just showcased, where the cause, the culprit, right? It's not the technology, but it's on the humans. But the side effects of this is that when AI tools are coming, they're not redesigning workflows. So think about the transformation point that we mentioned at the top. This research is showcasing that maybe there's input, maybe there is maybe there is ROI, maybe there's scalability on the projects, but most academic institutions have not redesigned the workflows that those tools were supposed to do. This is different to the example that you just gave, Andrea, I believe, because in one thing is I'm trying to keep up with it, but then you said, and there's got to be enablement now, because to keep up with these schemas, to keep up with this visibility or agent-friendly discoverability issues of website, search engine optimization and discovery is not the same. So I need to redesign my work. The technology has changed, but my job didn't. And that mismatch is exactly where institutional AI adoption could be breaking down. It's another manifestation of the human layer, right? Faculty and staff are using AI tools. The usage rates are going up. In this EDUCAUSE reporting, we also start seeing a second manifestation, the burden manifestation. AI is showing up, and it did not help me save 5 hours. It feels like it's actually putting 50 hours more on my plate. Why? Because as work is not being redesigned, now I'm working in parallel with whatever I have on my plate, plus making sure that these AI workflows and whatnot are also keeping up. So the human is not changing the job. The administrator, the operator is now doing his or her job plus some type of AI ownership. So overall, EDUCAUSE reporting is saying that AI tool usage is increasing. Transformation at the workflow level, it's not changing. And institutions' perception or users' perception is that it's actually a burden. So, Andrea, this is such a interesting reporting to me because it showcases the worst case manifestation that I care for my dear AI. Let me first give my statement and my bias. I'm a techno-optimist. I truly believe that student outcomes, the promise that we make to students in social mobility and knowledge acquisition and networking can only be attained if we change the way we do it. Because we've been trying it for 200 years and we've been okay, but it's not great. And the student experience, it's mediocre, to say the least. I think that we have an opportunity to do it with AI. But it is on the backs of these administrators, faculty, advisors, counselors, and they're feeling the pain in a different way. So how does this translate into the Andrea world and Everspring, where workflow redesign conversation? That example of now I did the AI work, but I need to come and help the educator think about differently. How do you facilitate all these enablement and kind of workflow transformation that it's on people who already have a busy schedule?
Right. And not to mention open positions. I was on a call the other day with a CMO at an institution in Texas, and he said, I have a 33-person team and I have 10 open roles, but my top priority is trying to deliver what we have in front of us, that needs these priorities. And so yes, and we're seeing it more so now than ever with the job market and how things are going on that side, but also expectations that they need to fill these roles and just not filling them at the rate that they need to fill, or budget freezes or whatever it may be. So I think it really is a challenge that we're trying to put tools that are AI tools on top of an already broken process. And so the way that I look at it is you put AI tools on top of a broken process, it just creates faster broken processes, right? It doesn't actually solve the problem. And so to your example of it's supposed to save me 5 hours and it feels like now it's making me work 50 is such a true situation. This is also new skills that, people who have done their job for a very, very long time and are very good at their job may not have the skill set that allows them to be successful when we put these tools into place. And so it's the human side of this process is so important to make sure that the governance is co-designed, from top down and bottom up, and that the processes are evaluated before the tools are put into place to ensure that the people are going to be the most successful that they can be on the way forward. I think many institutions did a really good job of establishing, how we're using AI and what the frameworks might look like in the very beginning. But then the gas got put on the advancements, and it became too much. And then that indecision on some of those workflow redesigns and the things that we've already talked about is really what makes these pieces fail. And so it becomes such a burden and not an accelerator.
I saw that example multiple times in my career on campus. I just got budget to hire because I need the help, but I cannot hire because I don't have time to do the interviews or even write the job description. AI is creating this burn-in trap again, that here are the resources for you to elevate the student experience, to optimize your metrics, but I just don't have the time to build it. On the burn-in addition trap, Are there incentives that we could start thinking about that changes this outcome? It is a problem that we've been having for a while, and as a techno optimist, I want to change it. Anything that could come to mind, or if I wanted to make a hard call and say, hey, this happens and stop doing this, who makes the call, or what incentives do you think can be? If I'm a leader, provost, a dean that you're advising, what say you to me if I want to change this a little bit in my institution? Tough question, no pressure.
But it goes back to the top of the conversation. How can we create a pilot that shows that this is going to work? So we need to create an atmosphere to encourage people to buy in to this transformation because, as humans, we're stubborn, right? Like we like to do things the way that we like to do them. And so it is important for us to then go back to the top and talk about how we can prove that this can work. And then begin to build that community around, the buy-in. We work with one institution that's exactly how they came to the conversation. They said, we know that we've got a tall hill to climb here to get everybody on board. So what is our lowest hanging fruit of opportunity to show? And little by little, we've continued to take the steps forward and engage a larger group and in hand be able to build out our partnership together. But the bottom line is we've been able to create a community of people who are now willing to listen and willing to work towards that operational change and that change management that's such an important part of this. We can't just flip a switch and expect people to get on board because that's where frustrations build and then we see the work fail.
Yes. In some POCs, all the ingredients you just mentioned could be basically delivered, right? And there's a fine line between now I'm being asked to participate in this and I'm not a partner, but I'm actually a subject of this experiment of transformation. And this staff resistance is important. I guess last question on this one. Is there anything that you could offer on if the solution is on the POCs and the scalability of the POCs, when staff is at that fine line between, am I a partner or am I a subject in this? What can institutions do differently so that from a governance point of view, these POCs have a higher propensity for success?
I think that answer is different for every institution, right? I mean, I think that there's such decentralization that has come out of institutions over the last several years that it makes it hard to have just one answer for that question because every leadership team is different, every staffing model is different, every reporting structure is different. It's just unfortunate that it's inconsistent. But I think at its core is aiming towards the same North Star. Like what are those outcomes that we're looking to establish as an institution? And that seems like a tall order, right? Like when, because I always joke with my enrollment colleagues, everybody wants more diverse, everybody wants people who are paying more. That's the dream, right? To build, but we also have to be realistic on what those goals look like. So I think having a leadership team that is clear on what the goals and expectations are, it has to be where it starts. Because otherwise we're all going to stay decentralized and running towards our own priorities and what gets us to the next day and what gets us to the next project. And I think that's where institutional chaos can unfortunately win out instead of reaching those goals.
I use that word, chaos, a ton. Specifically, AI can create chaos, specifically when it's individual AI. But what the organizational AI can do, it provides coordination. And this is basically one of the important aspects in the maturity of AI. So from this story, you cannot deploy AI first and govern later. By the time you get to governance, the deployment has created chaos, facts on the ground that are hard to unwind. And the institutions that make AI stick, right, are the ones that are actually co-designing governance and deployment from day one. So three stories, and I like to shift gears a little bit because in these three stories, I kind of see the problem landscape, and let's revisit some of these themes. But I'd like to now focus more on what you guys are doing at Everspring and how you're solving it. So that's okay. Let's start with, you've seen, so many clients, and one of those questions of who's the favorite one, but I know I'm not gonna ask the question who's your favorite one. So here's the framework. You don't have to mention the client, obviously, but without naming the client, what is the most meaningful AI deployment that you see in the university partner study? Like, what are these partners that are coming to the table and they're being successful? They're like a delight to work with. What makes them different? How are they 90 days different, or the 180 days? How do they buy? I don't know. What are you seeing as the ingredients that, oh, these guys are going to be a great client, they're going to be successful, and the ones that are not so much? So talk to me about positive data here.
Yeah. And it's such a mix, but it's actually a wonderful mix. I like to wake up and have a different day every day. And so, I'm thankful that we're able to do that because we're helping institutions just address different challenges, which is an exciting part of the job. I think the institutions that we see that have been most successful and we are able to move along faster are ones that have made incremental change over the last 20 years. This has not been something that they woke up in 2022 and was like, oh, AI is a new thing, like we've got to wrap our head around it. It's the ones that when we moved from sending one packet in the mail in the late 90s and we made our classes miraculously to adding in CRMs and building ComFlows and making sure our websites were offering the students a journey through their process. Those are the institutions that we are seeing higher levels of success with the adoption of AI and using the tools to meet the goals that they have in front of them. They don't know everything. They're learning, as they go, but they're able to put the guard down and say, we're in this. We're going to be a partner. We're going to walk alongside you. We're going to figure this out together. And they're bringing people to the table who have the eye on what the outcome is, what the overarching strategy is, and they're bringing people to the table who are the ones who are in the weeds, who are doing the job. And so it's a collaborative conversation about what we need to drive towards and then who's going to help us get there. So I think that's been the most successful engagements have been in that space. On the flip side, I think that there's a very large learning curve in higher education for the role that AI plays, whether it is on the recruitment side, the admission side, even on the philanthropy side for fundraising, faculty, staff, the whole nine yards. And there's different levels of sophistication in that understanding of what that role is. And that's okay to stay at that crawl stage for a longer period of time. It just changes what the partnership looks like. Are we spending time on the education side, teaching people about some of the reasons why we're here and the impacts that they're seeing versus being able to go into problem-solving mode and making changes? So it's just a different type of partnership, but in the end, they can both be very, very successful. One just might take a little bit longer to get there.
Hear you. I hear you. I have some more questions for you. So this one could be a quick one, but from the Everspring side, the enrollment management use cases, kind of the prospective student augmentation via AI is your sweet spot. But there's a lot of partners out there who specialize on operations, doing things outside that domain. Where are you seeing, do you think there's more traction in enrollment management prospective student work here? Or is there non-marketing narrative being basically not talked about as it relates to AI? Do we have a better chance with AI in operations at the institutions, from parking lots, door management, academic success, how we run a university, versus the marketing narrative that we know a lot of AI, it's super good? What do you see there?
Yeah. We are seeing more and more over the last 24 months, the second part of your statement, the operational side, because we are learning more the importance of centralizing the conversation that we have here, and it can't just be about enrollment, right? Obviously, enrollment often takes the lead of the conversation because it's the revenue that builds the institution's bottom line, right? And so it's a huge driver. But once we get the students there, it is so important to do all of the right things to keep them there so that you are creating graduates of your institution who then become donors of your institution, right? And so we've got to pull that thread through the entire experience, the research that's being done at institutions. So the faculty and the researchers, the role that they play, the parents, the friends of, like it is such a huge community. We work with several large public institutions, and one comes to mind that they've been very focused on the revenue that comes from athletics. And that's been a big part of the work that they do. But it's so important to balance a budget that we're looking at it from all the sides of the coin. And so I think centralizing this conversation around, the institution priorities really makes this more of an operational angle than just focusing on enrollment. And so we're walking that path with many institutions who are finally bringing that conversation to the center, maybe even centralizing the budgets around how money is spent to make these changes and ensuring that there is alignment. Because again, if we keep it decentralized and fragmented, then it's much harder to meet the goals that are in front of them.
That was incredible. Andrea, that's exactly the conversation I wanted to have. Data gives us the diagnosis, the reporting, the conversation kind of gives us the landscape of the situation. But I really think that your POV is bringing the treatment on how to handle that. So great distilled frameworks. And I'm excited to see how you bring this as a course in partnership with us. So I'm excited to be seeing you in about a month in Charlotte. So everybody who wants to spend more time with Andrea and how these frameworks of scalability or POCs become a reality. June 15th, Charlotte. Check us out at the Engage 2026 conference. Andrea, thank you so much for your time. Incredible takeaways, and I appreciate your thinking and what you're doing for the sector. To summarize, the takeaways I want all of you to leave with is that the institutions that make AI stick are not the ones making the technology the first center point here. They're the ones that actually are asking the hardest questions. Who owns it? What is the outcome? How are we measuring it? And what should humans stop doing, if you will, right? What governance enablement it comes on day one, not on day 180. And this is basically what Andreas brought us to. If your academic institution, if your college, if your university is sitting on a pilot right now or about to launch, these are the questions you should be asking now, not at the end of the pilot. I'm JC Bonilla. This is Higher Intelligence, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to Higher Intelligence. This show is part of the Enrollify network, home to the largest collection of podcasts in higher education. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. You can find more podcasts, webinars, videos, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe to get new content sent directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the AI agent platform for higher education. Learn more at element451.com.